Hey everyone, this is an open door. Cindy, it's July 3rd. And first, it's so cool that you're all here. Technically, for a lot of people, it's a holiday, and feel really blessed to spend this hour with you. This is the hour where we connect with a teacher and we kind of look at what's all the same and have a discussion. And typically we assign like an hour long podcast, sometimes a 2.5 hour long podcast. Um, but since this week, um, I'm just coming back from retreat and well, it's technically a holiday or the beginning of a holiday weekend in the US. Didn't know how many people were going to be here and how many people really wanted to download something new. I didn't. What ended up being put on the website were two really short Eckhart Tolle videos. So my plan as the facilitator is that we get to watch one of them together instead of which 12 minutes there. Each one is only like 12, 13 minutes long. And then we'll see what kind of discussion happens. And if time and desire allows, we'll watch the second one together. Does that sound good? Have I mentioned lately how much I love us? So it feels so good to be here. Unbelievably good to be here. Um, if you'd like to take notes, go ahead. If you'd like to just listen, go ahead. I invite us all to take a moment before we watch, though, and just sink into everything we do at an open door, right? Even though we're going to listen with open ears and open everything, just recognize, why are you in this meeting? Why are we here? What is it you might um, maybe even just invite your highest self to help you download or get the information that is most useful for you now. That's a good way of putting it. And let's do this thing. Let me make sure I have it. So this first one's called How to Wake Up from an Unhappy Life. Here we go.
My life is something, is a narrative in many people's head that causes an enormous amount of suffering. You can't imagine how many people's lives are made miserable by a very unhappy story in their head that they identify with and call it my life. That it's people just driven to suicide by the unhappy narrative that tells them how awful my life is. And they never realize they are trapped in a delusion of thought. If they were able to step out, and again the question arises, where is your life? Let me think. This is all my past, my dreadful past, my probably dreadful future. That's my life. All the things have gone wrong, all the things that I missed, all the things that people have done to me, all the things that the universe has done to me, all that is all just been just awful. Nobody has suffered more than me. Nobody. And people don't realize how much unhappiness is derived from what they're telling themselves in the head. Now, these people need to come out of that if they want to be free. Do you want to suffer more? No. Okay, are you ready to step out of the narrative in your mind that says my life and realize that you don't have a life? that the whole thing that you call my life is certain thoughts that float around in your head and you identify with them. You don't have a life, you are life. And to realize that you are life, which is a temporary expression of the one life, the one consciousness that pervades the entire universe. You are a temporary expression of that one life. You don't have a life. And if you don't have a life, you can't lose your life. People say, he lost his life. She lost her life. How does that work? There's he and there's his life. Who is he and who is the life that he lost? There's a duality there that doesn't exist. You can't lose your life because you are life. You don't have a life. They are just memories and thoughts in your head, yes. But the life that you are can only be realized in the present moment. And in the present moment, the first realization comes to you when you realize that there can be gaps between thoughts. When you realize that apart from thinking, there is another dimension of consciousness in you that is not disconnected from thinking, but deeper than thinking. We could say higher too, higher than thinking. And what is that? That is awareness or presence. And you realize this dimension of consciousness in you right now when you become conscious. I'm slowing down, as you might have noticed. When you become conscious that there are not only words here being spoken, but there are also gaps between the words. And you become aware that there are these gaps between words or between one sentence and another. And when you become conscious of that gap, which we could also call a moment of stillness, you might notice that every time you are conscious of this little gap, when there's no word, in that moment you are aware, but you're not thinking. And you haven't disappeared. In that space of awareness, the essence of who you are is there fully. And yet, it's almost like nothing, and yet it's not nothing. Undoubtedly, there is a presence that is deeper than thought, out of which thought arises. And to sense in yourself this presence that has no characteristics as such, it's pure conscious presence. To sense that is to get in touch with the essence of who you are. And that essence, if we had to attach a word to it, to describe it, we would probably call it consciousness. You are that consciousness, out of which thoughts come. In the same way, I sense or experience thoughts as movements on the surface, like waves and ripples on the surface of a vast ocean. Thinking. Now, if you only live on the surface, then all that you have is waves and ripples, which are thoughts. There's only this dimension for you, and you can't stop thinking. And you look for some kind of answer to who you are on that level only. Maybe if I join with this ripple, I'll feel better. Or I need to accumulate power over all these other ripples, then I'll be someone. Or I need to own more ripples than others. But always never being able to go beyond that. So, the cessation of thinking, which is not falling below thinking, which is not a regressive step to where the animals still dwell, because the animal has not yet arrived at conceptual thinking. Consciousness, yes, but not conceptualization, not thought. The animal, are we regressing when I present to you the possibility of discovering within yourself the possibility of stepping out of thought? But I'm not saying this is a regressive step towards the animal or the vegetable realm. The dog is more peaceful and joyous than most humans, except neurotic dogs that have lived for too long with humans. The dog is more joyous, non-judgmental, and alive than most of the people who own these dogs, because the dog does not have a burden of a conceptual self. It does not have the burden of an ego, except some neurotic dogs or cats have already a beginning of little egos, yes, but we'll put that aside. So the dog looks at you and does not judge you because it doesn't have concepts, but is conscious. But are we going there it's wonderful. Why do people love dogs and cats? Why do they go, Because when you look into the eyes of a dog, you realize for a moment, you connect with the dog, and you can sense the beingness or the consciousness of the dog looking through the eyes back at you. And this consciousness of the dog, although it's not the same as the human consciousness, is also one aspect of the universal consciousness, temporarily taking on the form of dog. This consciousness looks at you, and for a moment you feel free to not think, and you might not even know that. When you look into the eyes of the dog for 3 or 4 seconds, you're not thinking when you feel joy arising. For 3 or 4 seconds. And it makes you feel good. The cessation of thought makes you feel good, because then you can sense your beingness, your deeper presence, your beingness. And this is why people get connect with animals. They give them moments of sanity.
I was laughing. I was on a walk this morning, and a very chubby corgi was on the other side of the street, saw me, and it was like she had just seen her best friend ever. We've never met. And this dog went nuts. Her owner had no choice. I was like, can I say hello? And this dog, literally, it was like, she's like that with everyone. Never met her before, but it literally, I don't know how long, but it just filled me with so much joy. I didn't want to help. So I could share my little notes, but I'm inspired to open it up. Josephine, how was that for you?
I unfortunately was on a phone call and didn't hear most of it. I just heard the last 5 minutes. So I'll wait until others comment and I'll learn more. I'll have to do it on recall.
It would be very useful to watch that video, at another time for you then, because yeah, it's a good one. And Eckhart Tolle sometimes for me is the same as petting a dog. He has this way about him that just shifts my energy state. Amy,
Eckhart Tolle is like petting a dog. I
well,
love that.
there's this space between. He said the dog changes your energy, right? Because there's no conceptual separated self. And he even pointed out when he said, "Can you notice like I'm slowing down my speaking?" He has he has so many holes in his conceptual self of who he is separate from source that when you really just listen to him, it almost doesn't matter what he's saying. You get that sense of consciousness that connects with the consciousness in you. So he said it's like petting a dog. It's
Dog, I always remember dog is God spelled backwards. What I love Eckhart Tolle. I remember he saved my life. The power of now changed my life. It set me on the direct path. It was a long time ago, and it came at exactly the right time. And I've always loved him. He's such a gentle man. And he reminds me of Jesus. I saw him in New York in a big, I forget where it was, some huge auditorium. And we were all raised up, and he was down on the center of the stage. And that was the first time I'd really seen someone get up and speak extemporaneously the truth. Just speak the truth. And I just fell in love with him in the most universal, loving way. He was a balm, just a balm to me. And so he still is. What I loved that, what I picked up on there, which was particularly important to me at this moment, was the narrative of your life, and how and for Jean Klein, that's the memories. The memories form the narrative, and then we string the memories together, and they form a story, and then we identify with that story, and that story becomes blah blah blah. And so, yeah, that's what really struck me. And it struck me because I got into a conversation with my sister yesterday, and she was not aware, not just not aware of what she was saying. And she triggered me, and I fell into ignorance, and I responded in a way that I could have responded better. And then this whole narrative came up for me about the history with my sister. And I could hear her saying, Amy, you always do blah, 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 blah. And so it's just amazing how we fall into these. And thank you, Cindy. I won't go on anymore with my narrative.
Grateful. My conversation with my sister was this morning, so we could talk about that later. Yeah. But it's so useful what you said, because one of the things that just in looking at it, I don't know, um, I even said, I didn't say Eckhart Tolle's egoic conceptual self was gone. He's still in a body. I don't know if it's gone or not. I just said there's a lot of holes in it. And our conceptual self, a sense of self, is getting more transparent, more holy. But that doesn't mean it's not still there and it doesn't still get activated and we don't still respond from it. So I do a lot of self-forgiveness. Hey, Rana.
Hey, hi everyone.
Hey.
Grateful to be here. Jumping off what Amy just said, the first thing that stuck out to me was my life. You know, when I hear that now, me, mine, now that's kind of a little signal there to be like, is that true? Is it mine? Is it mine? And he used the expression, it's just a delusion of thought. And so I thought that was a great way to describe what I think my life is. You know, other people can objectively look at each other's lives, right? And think, wow, your life seems X, Y, or Z, but then it's my perception about my life, right? And I have this very small, limited view and it becomes mine and there's all the suffering. But he referred to us as temporary expressions of the one life. And I can't hear that enough, you know. And what the other thing that really stuck out was the pointing to the gaps between the thoughts. And that's what I am. That's where I find beingness. And the idea that thoughts are sort of layered over the ever-present presence, you know? And I'm not thinking about this in linear time. It's just, you know, what is arising? It layers over that. And then once that thought comes in, then comes the memory and the story, and then all the should and shouldn'ts. And then I'm into this delusion of my life and I'm suffering again. So that the pointing to the animals was very helpful. And I too get just this sense of peace as I listen to him. I had never been exposed to him before I got here. I was exposed to the book A Road Less Traveled at the young age of 23. And if anybody knows my story, I was not ready to hear any of that. So when I read that first line, life is difficult, I shut the book and put it back on the shelf. I was like, no shit, you know? So it's just so funny to see how these teachings have been knocking on the door like my whole seeming existence, but wasn't quite ready to let go of ego enough to even allow them to come in. So it's just so cool. But he described animals as having consciousness, but not conceptual thinking. And I was like, all right. And then I thought of Taylor, my dog. She brings me right to the present moment. And that look in her eyes, right? It's pure consciousness looking right back at me. And it's, you know, they're almost here as little reminders, but we don't know that because we've forgotten, you know, it's like consciousness is right here. and they're completely present as consciousness. And it brings me back to the moment. So, and I like the little joke about some of them sort of starting to form egos because, yeah, I mean, in my perception, I anthropomorphize, do you like that word? Animals all the time, and I learned that growing up with my mom, who loves her animals, I mean, she knew when the parakeet was cold. She would
She
say
gives
that,
the parakeet a blanket or a
well,
coat or
no,
something.
but then she would say that the parakeet was looking a little pale today, you know? I'd be like, how do you know that? But anyway, I very much enjoyed sitting with this, and I put it in my likes folder on YouTube so I could go back to it again because, like you said, it's not the words, really. It's pointings, but then it's the energy and vibration around all of it. So thank you, everyone.
I've heard him teach about animals before and how it's really only pets that have anxiety and neuroses because they hang out with humans too long. I've heard him say that more than once. Yeah. Hi, Sandra.
Hi, everybody. I just want to say ditto to Amy. I feel like it was a lifeline when I read his books. And I don't even know how I got his books, but I do know that after I had my the experiences, I went to this Christian church thinking they had the answers. And I was so confused doing these Bible studies that had nothing to do with what I had experienced. And then somebody gave me his book, The Power of Now. And that was like, yes, yes, yes. And then the New Heaven and New Earth. And I think I've read them maybe 5 times each with different people, with my kids. So, yeah, being with him is like being with a pet. It is so comforting. He is comforting. His voice, his aura. And the part that stuck out to me was, you don't have a life, you are life. That is just so, hits the nail on the head, right? It's right to the point. You don't have a life, you are life. And then he went on to say something like, so you can't, if you are life, it can only be in the present moment. Because having a life is like in the past. And I also liked his use of the word narrative. Boy, that narrative still, even after all these years, likes to pop in and get triggered. But then the whole part that you brought up, Rana, about life is difficult. I actually loved that book because I related to life being difficult. And what he went on to say about it was just so exactly what we've been saying here. That when you believe life is, when you accept that life is difficult, somehow when you accept that and you acknowledge it and you stop resisting it, it becomes less difficult. It's not difficult anymore. It becomes the word a challenge, or it's just things that are happening, and you can accept them, as Mendego tells us, as helpful to us. I loved that part of it. And I do have to be reminded. I have to be reminded all the time. That's why I come here almost every day. So thank you, as
And
always.
yes, it was the second video, Ron. It's just,
Oh, it was the second video?
the road less traveled was from the second video, but it doesn't
Yeah,
matter.
all roads It all runs together. It's
It's
only,
it.
don't you love that? That it's only difficult when you're resisting it. When you start accepting it and that this is just life. I was reading someone else. I've been really loving Jan Fraser's book. What's that book called? The Freedom of Being. And in it, she said, it suddenly occurred to her that how she feels about something isn't what's important. And I got that. It's not when something, anything that happens, I have an immediate feeling about it. That's not what's important. And I can let go of that and I can just let it be, whatever it is. Then it's no longer this big brouhaha. I mean, Amy had it with her sisters. I had it with my son-in-law last weekend. And as soon as I stopped letting how I felt about it be so important and could see it just as him being him, I had no problem anymore. Absolutely had no problem with it. So that's enough for me. Let's hear from Patricia.
When I got off the phone after talking to my sister this morning and really kind of just took us a few minutes with it, I recognized that if I was upset, it's just because I expected it to be different, which was very similar to what you just said. So I was able to catch it right away because I was actually doing that contemplation while she was speaking. And I was also able to communicate, and I was walking and I was watching the birds. So I had a lot of things going for me. And she interrupted me listening to Eckhart Tolle. So I was in the perfect place to observe this mind during the conversation. But I got off the phone and I recognized that the only upset here was something here wanted her to be different, wanted her expression to be different. And that's on me, not on her, right? Yeah, so it's sort of what you just said. Trisha, I love that you're in this world and in our life and part of an open door. And the color of your shirt, kind of like that too.
Thank you. I love being here, and I am so grateful to you for creating this. Once again, I say thank you. And of
You're
course,
welcome.
and I say
Sandra's been helping me just say thank you.
good. Um, I was thinking of two things. One thing that happened yesterday when I was, no, three things. First, I love him because he's so simple. Not a lot of words. It's like he gets to the heart of the matter. He lands the plane and it's beautiful. So I love that about him. And his metaphors are lovely. So the ripples on the water, it's all thoughts, the past, and how the past affects. I grew up with a lot of guilt, and it always gets triggered. Not always, it tends to get triggered, but I'm much more aware of it, and I can just smile at it and say, oh my, this is old, and let it go. And forgive myself for feeling that way. And the other thing I wanted to mention is about critters, about dogs, cats. God, I love them. They're such good teachers, and birds, and all of nature. This is a past memory because my pups have been deceased for a while now. At 5 o'clock in the morning, we used to take them to the beach before the dog catcher got there. So 5 o'clock in the morning, there we are in the car. And the excitement from one of them, his name was Bodhi and Pema, after my Buddhism. And boy, he had so much joy. And I used to say, oh my God, you have so much joy. And finally, when they got out of the car, such joy of just being able to run down the beach back and forth and see them smile. And Bodhi's way was of loving people. He would go up if anybody was there and give them kisses and say hello. Some people didn't really appreciate it, especially if they were meditating. Um, and Pema would just run the beach and you could see her ears flapping. What beautiful memories of joy. I just wanted to share that. Thank you.
I saw, David, that you put something in the chat. Would you read it? Are you willing to let us know what I don't have my chat open. It popped up and it disappeared. You'd have to unmute though, so we could hear you. You're still muted. Let's see if I can click this. Does that help?
Everything on the screen kind of moved over and I can't get to the unmute. Well, I would put it on there and say, but I talk too much and I put too much stuff on. One thing, but what I was thinking about is thoughts to me are like wallpaper. I mean, the what is real is there, in other words, and sometimes I might think it's good, sometimes I might think it's boring, sometimes I might think it's just god awful nasty. And so I cover it up with, stuff I try to cover it up with with the thoughts that I have, which, at least I don't know, but it's like, that's not what's real. The thoughts are not real. Like when you were talking about the ripples, to me, the ripples on let's say on the ocean or the lake or whatever body is there, are they pop up, but they're not there very long. And to me, that's the way thoughts are. They're there, but they're not permanent. They're just transitional. I can't think of a better word, but then they're gone. In other words, but unless I hold on to them and clutch onto them, and I'm not going anywhere with this, but I can't really hold on to them, even the one, because they don't last. In other words, unless I really want them to last. And then I think, I don't, this doesn't make any sense, but if I have a thought that's negative, it's almost like it's sort of like a leech, and it just burrows into my body or something, and I guess maybe I let it, and and uh, and so it can stay there for years. And sometimes I have thoughts that are good, and I cling to those, like the thoughts in the ocean, or the ripples, let's say. But I never can hold on to them long enough, and they're not real either. I mean, they're just thoughts. But if I, what I'm wondering is if I, like somebody just said, or you said, if I just quit giving too much power to thoughts, and just be happy and content and peaceful with what is, then I don't have to, then my life will be a lot simpler. Like I was thinking about Eckhart Tolle when I went to see Eckhart Tolle in Chicago. It was like 1999 or 2000, and here he is. He's kind of he's a little short person, and he was sitting in this big chair, and his feet didn't quite reach the ground. And I thought, and here were thousands of people. He filled up the Chicago, whatever, this Civics Theater or something. There were like 5,000 people there, and he reminded me of Edith Ann in the rocking chair, and that'll never get out of my head. But then he started talking, and he was smiling, and he was very quiet, and you had to be quiet because he didn't have a very big voice, and so to be able to understand what was going on, everybody got really, really quiet and paid attention. And he was just, he was just so, he was just so peaceful, and it was just so. When we got out of there, this friend of mine who was with me, it was just like, oh, that's how life works. This is how it's supposed to be. or at least, that's what we thought, and wow, this is a whole lot better than it was when I walked into this room. And so when I walked out, I felt like, now I get it. And when I was listening, I went listened to that this morning, this one we just looked, and it was like, oh yeah, now we remember. It's just simple. It's not complicated. And I just have to, let myself be who I am, and things will be okay. So I know I'm talking and talking and talking, but thank you for listening. And I'm still working on sorting things out, but this little soliloquy that I had made it a lot simpler. So thank you.
Thank you. And I'm just one human being saying, in my world, you never talk too much, David.
Okay.
I enjoy it. Perhaps why I call you out, when we get it stuck in our head somehow that what I have to say isn't of value. And what we've learned, at least in an open door, is everything, whenever we're inspired to speak, it's of immense value. And you never know how you're affecting the person next to you.
Okay. I'll try to remember that.
If you ever talk too much, I'll tell you.
Yeah, I don't know how I'll ever get this screen back together, but it doesn't matter. Today we'll have a 2/3 screen.
That's fine. Melanie, so good to have you here.
Hi, everyone. And thank you for what you just said, Cindy. So now I won't feel embarrassed about whatever comes out. But actually, David, when you were talking about, is there anybody there who can control your thoughts? I mean, they just come, there's no one there. And so if negative thoughts arise, it's all okay. It's all awareness happening. It's just happening. And there's no one there controlling it. There's nowhere there doing it. It's just life is being itself. And if it goes thoughts, that's part of it too. That's awareness playing the game of being a separate self. I don't know, just to throw that out. And I also, this made me think of, listening to Eckhart made me think of, and Nendigo, of course, because, that the challenges are all here for us. Everything is here for us. And life is presenting us with countless invitations to recognize itself again. And that's its joy, is to see itself in everything. Even what appears to the separate self as negative, it's just an invitation to come home and be home. So that's my spiel. Thank you.
So it feels like it's now, oh yeah, chills on the arm. So it's now time for Cindy to speak. I wonder what Cindy's gonna say. I heard clearly in sitting with both of the videos. I guess we're only really gonna listen to one. But listening to them this morning and listening to everyone else here and being with what we're sharing. And in many ways, what David just shared, really, you go into a space, and Eckhart Tolle, who is consciousness in many ways, Eckhart Tolle is one of these human beings on the face of the earth. There are others, right? But we're talking about Eckhart, who, especially when he shares in this space, is as close to pure consciousness probably as we can get in human form, right? Barbie, would you like to share first, or should I finish? You could go. If you'd like. I saw your hand.
Yeah, I'll go. I love both videos because they both spoke to me personally. The synchronicity in my life, I can't imagine what's happening, but so be it. Because now I know I'm not going to call them problems. I'm going to call them challenges. Because now I know these challenges are brought up because there's something that I have to improve in my life to not fix my life, but to release whatever's wrong or whatever I think it's wrong, but whatever. But I do like when they were talking about the neurotic dog, I just cracked up all the way. But I haven't been able to walk ever since surgery, the pulling of the tooth. But for the 3 days for all the times I was walking, there's this dog that always barks at me. And I mean, barks. I mean, the door was shut. The mother had to come out and say, shut up. Well, I think she knows he's barking at me all the time. Well, anyways, so one time I walked past and I could see him. I'm eyeing him and he's ready to jump out when I pass and he barks. I said, good morning. He barked again. I said, good morning. And this time I called him God. He barked again. I said, good morning. The second time I walked around, I just had to say good morning twice. So I was ready to go out Monday to see if he'd only bark once or he'd leave me alone. But I just say, I know you're greeting me, so what's the difference in the barking? But it has gotten down where he doesn't bark like 5 minutes anymore. But it has helped me. Like I know I have to learn I got to learn patience more because I erupt at every little thing. That's my big problem that I have to tackle. But other than that, I guess I'm set in my ways. Thank you.
Thank you. I've learned, I don't even call them, I think you said obstacles. I call them gifts now. What we used to call problems, and you could call them obstacles. When studying this Kabbalah class with my sisters, he's literally, he keeps saying over and over and over again to invite them as gifts. They're opportunities for us to be aware of a sense of pushing against life's flow. And then the moment we get triggered by anything, so like I heard a lot of self-attack in what you just said, Barbie. That's the way I received it. The moment you hear yourself putting yourself down or saying you're not enough, you could call that a gift. Oh, look at that. I am attacking myself. God made me. So there's
And
nothing here to attack.
and I know I attack myself, and I don't know why. I don't like suffering, but
Well, no, you can, in the moment you catch yourself attacking yourself, you could go to the gap. That's it. Just step back and go look at that again. This ego mind is attacking, and the ego only attacks itself, and none of it is real because what God made is divinely beautiful and perfect and innocent. So that's a longer conversation. But thank you for being here. Mandego, are you there? I see your hands. I see your square.
Hi, so happy to be here. So amazing to hear you. And I actually have been beating myself up really bad. I think it's today, yesterday, because I made a mistake. And I'm like remembering. So when I was young, or no, I don't know, I was like maybe like 15, I don't know. My dad used to hit me when I made a mistake. Used to yell and hit me. And and so I used to always shake in fear. And I remember I finally got the courage to tell him, and he apologized to me, which was amazing. And then he asked me how he could be like me. And so everything changed. It was so amazing. Um, and now I know too why I love bugs. I love bugs so much because they're just love. I love watching them. I love seeing them. Like I love ants. I just love them. And now I know why. It's because it's me. It's it's love. I love I just yeah. So it's just and plants. I love plants too. I love seeing a new leaf every single time. It just brings me so much joy. Um, yeah, so it's just so amazing. um, just to have these like new awareness or new like, oh, okay. Um, and I just love being here so much with all of you. It's just such a gift. So thank you. I can't thank you enough. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Yes, every moment is a gift. All right, my summary. Um, and I'm going back to David's share. It was so useful for me. Um, this is what I heard in David's share, and this is what I heard in this video too. When you simply stop thinking, there is peace and contentment and happiness. Now said it. And David said it too. I gotta learn how to stop thinking. Da, 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 da. I walk in and I sit in a stadium of 5,000 people, and this tiny little man who many of us can feel and be with pure consciousness. And he talks softly. And in order to be with him, you have to stop thinking and pay attention to consciousness, to his presence. And when you just say, this is important, and with Eckhart, I paid all this money. This is a once, oh, I got chills. This is a once in a lifetime situation. So let me really pay attention to this man who the ego will say knows something I don't know. Right? And so you get real quiet, and all of your attention is placed on his soft voice as he tells us it's not the words I'm speaking, it's the space between the words. And we start becoming entrained in the space between his words and our thinking. I've been listening to Helen Hamilton speak a lot too. And she keeps saying when you're questioning and you're paying attention, you're not thinking. Like when we stop, thoughts are just thought forms happen all the time. It's when we string them together and say, this is my thoughts. He said, this is my life. That's what he said. This is my life. We're stringing thoughts together and creating a narrative. And then our attention is placed on the thoughts that then become our story. That's the only problem we have. It's the only life is a series of events. It's the beginning of and when we look at them and say, this is my series of events, and it's my problem to solve, and it's my life. And Eckhart's saying, no, 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 no. Life simply is. Life simply is. And if you want to know what that means, be here now. And I'm going right back to David sitting in a stadium with 5,000 other people with pure consciousness in the center. And everybody is still. And whether they know it or not, they're not listening to Eckhart's words. They're entraining to the gap between the words. And when we entrain and stay in awareness of the gap between the words, our natural state is what's there. There's nothing to search for. There's nothing to seek. There's nothing to do. The happiness, the contentment, the I'm okayness is always with us. And all that's necessary is to entrain to the gap between the words. And then the words, Helen's helping me with this a lot, which is why the words are there. The words are formless too. The words are consciousness too. The events and experiences, it's all part of the whole. It's that word my grabs our attention and it sucks us into the narrative in Eckhart's term. And that's just it. And then he says, and I saw it too, if I stop thinking about my life, then what am I? I don't got nothing, this fear of losing the self. But he said it. He said, if you're in the gap between the thoughts, there is the note, you're aware. You're just not thinking. You're still there. There's an awareness of being there. David didn't sit in that room with Eckhart and feel like he lost himself. He communicated, as he's sitting there trying to say, I shouldn't talk too much, he's sitting there going, oh, so this is it. This is who I am. Awareness without thinking. David.
What that brought to mind is, well, I know that Ken Wapnick would talk about Beethoven and in the silence in between the notes of his sonatas, and so, let's say. And so, and I love to listen to George Winston. I don't know if any of you are familiar with him. He's a pianist, and he has these. You know, he was probably in the 1980s. He wrote these wonderful songs, and they're still wonderful. And you can find them on all the different kind of music. But he'll start out really slow with a song. It's something he wrote. My favorite is called Winter. And he'll play, but he starts out playing with one hand and just really slowly between the notes. And I've heard the song, so, and I know that, okay, this is going to be great. And I don't, and I know, but listening to the silence in between the notes, I know that there's going to be much more if I just shut up and listen and pay attention. And then he plays a little something else, and then he gets the other hand involved, and it's like, that's, if I just pay attention to life, start, appreciate the quiet, the simple, the notes, the silence between the notes, all the rest will come because it's all there. In other words, Beethoven's Fifth is still that is going to be there. He'll start that one. I think starts out a little slow too, but it's all the music, all the wonderful music is there, and we just all I need to do is sit and be quiet and know, and don't worry about this or that, or how long does this music last, and so forth, and it will all come because it's all there all the time. Thank you.
So I am going to comment on what you just shared. I'm going to make one little tweak in what you just shared based on a lot of these conversations we are having. Thoughts happen. Telling ourselves we have to shut them off makes our lives miserable. So that there's a thought stream that occurs all the time. What we have some level, and again, our hour is up, so I'm going to leave you with this. Oh, Cindy's getting the last word. It's not that I have to shut up and listen. It's that I don't have to listen to the thoughts anymore. I prefer to listen to the music. And when whatever we pay attention to grows, so if we choose to simply withdraw our attention from the thinking and place more and more of our attention in the stillness and the silence, and watching the grass grow is actually a really cool thing. By the way, I can do that. I love it. The more we pay attention, it's what we pay attention to, that's what grows. So the moment we say, I got to just figure out how to shut up, or I just got to shut up and listen, we're actually paying more attention, and we're owning. They're saying, my thoughts, my thinking, and that just feeds it. So it's literally not that. Let the thinking do whatever the thinking wants to do. I'm going to turn over here and listen to the silence. And then that's the practice. That's the habit. This is the end of the Amy, please.
When you finish the recording, or maybe I just wanted to check in with people about tomorrow. It's July 4th, and check in and see whether we're meeting or not and all of that. So when you're finished, we can have
Okay. Yeah, we are meeting today in 3 hours though, so please come there. And now I love us very much, and I'll stop the recording.